Let's make progress. Question for oral answer under Standing Order 76. The Honorable Member for Kafinsa.
Mr. Speaker, I have been requested to ask question number 178 on behalf of the many people that are affected by the two decisions by government. I thank you.
The Honorable Member for Kafinsa, the honor of the question.
Mr. Speaker, last week I rose on an urgent matter of public importance. When I rose on that urgent matter of public importance, there was a specific issue that I raised on that particular day. The issue I raised attracted the attention of Madam Speaker, and Madam Speaker guided that I should put in a written question, and I did submit a written question. And in that written question, I asked the Minister of Finance as follows. One, I asked the Minister of Finance if government is aware that the two decisions by the Bank of Zambia, approved by government, have impacted on the citizens. That was my first question. My second question in the written document was what measures, the questions were very clear, what measures government was taking. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we avoid answering the substantive questions, we'll be reluctant to submit written questions. There are specific questions that the public out there want answers for. There's a reason why I submitted that written question. So, Mr. Speaker, my first follow-up question, because Standing Order number 76 allows me to ask two. So my first follow-up question directed at the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance, in the third quarter of 2022, government spent $333 million to cushion the effects of the exchange rate. In the fourth quarter, which was the last 3 months of 2022, government spent $443 million to cushion the exchange rate. Because in your response, Minister, you've indicated that one of the reasons you've taken these steps is to control the volatility of the exchange rate. So, Minister, I want to ask my first follow-up question. Having spent these huge sums of money, 300 million and 400 million, was there a need for government to approve the increase in the statutory reserve ratio? Was there a need for government to approve the increment in the monetary policy rate when you are already spending so many millions of dollars to try and control the exchange rate? Mr. Speaker, that would be my first follow-up question. Thank you.
Order. The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And it does help to have precise questions, because when the questioners wander all over the place, we are also forced to respond to some of the sideline issues that they raise. The questions that have been put are very specific, and I'll answer them very specifically. But perhaps let me start off with an issue that Honorable Kampiongo raised. Are you not aware of the fact that interest rates have been influenced upwards because customers are receiving notifications? Here we must distinguish between two things. There are two actions that are being discussed here. The first one is the increase in the statutory reserve ratio. The statutory reserve ratio measure that was taken has no bearing on the interest rates that customers pay. However, the other measure that was taken, namely the change in the indicative interest monetary policy rate, that does have impact on the lending rates or interest rates in general. So the answer is very specific. Statutory reserve ratio impact on interest rates, no. The monetary policy indicative rate, yes. The impact on people. The impact on people. Mr. Speaker, once again, it's important to say these adjustments to the rates that we are talking about, these are standard policy tools. These are standard policy tools that exist in all the central banks in the world. If you listen to the Bank of England, you hear that sometimes they increase the rates, sometimes they lower it. If you listen to the European Central Bank, sometimes they lower the rate, sometimes they increase the rate. If you listen to South Africa, sometimes they increase the rate, sometimes they lower the rate. So there's nothing strange at all. There's nothing strange in adjusting the rate either way or another. It is something that happens all over the world. Now, Mr. Speaker, the reason why the rate has been increased, is primarily because of the depreciation of the exchange rate. The depreciation of the exchange rate is the one that has been the main driver for adjusting the rates upwards. The honorable questioner said, you already spent so much dollars to intervene. Why was it necessary to do some more? The reason is simple, that these are the measures of direct interventions, direct sales of dollars, have not been enough in the light of the excessive pressure caused by excessive external borrowing. So those measures that we're talking about, they were not enough. And therefore, it became necessary that we put additional measures in place to help to stabilize the rate. Mr. Speaker, this matter can be likened like this. In our houses, we don't want water all over the house. Okay? You don't want water in your bedroom. You don't want water in your kitchen, on the floor. You don't want that. But if you see that your house is catching fire, the water that you don't like to be all over the place, you are going to get it to do what? To quench the fire. Okay? Normally, you don't like your house to be wet. But when there's a fire, you need the water to do what? To quench the fire. So in this particular case, even as much as we sympathize of the fact that interest rates are painful, we need that to quench the fire of the exchange rate getting out of control. So between the discomfort of interest rates going up and the discomfort of exchange rate getting wild, the government is of the opinion, and I think the people of Zambia agree, that the most important thing that we need to deal with now is to stabilize the exchange rate. So it is a matter of balancing out. It's a matter of balancing out. So, Honorable, I hope I've answered your questions more precisely, because your questions were also precise. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kafinsa, your last question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will remain very specific with my questions. because these questions are not about the 156 members of parliament here. These are questions for the people out there who are waiting for answers. They want to hear what government has to state on very specific questions. Mr. Speaker, and I hope you ignore this point of order so that I'm allowed
Order.
so that I'm
Order.
allowed to
Let's hear him.
so that I'm allowed to ask a very important question.
May the honorable member continue.
Mr. Speaker, my second question, in line with Standing Order 76, I refer the Minister to the written questions. The first one is whether government is aware, and the Minister says government is aware. And in his response, the Minister of Finance is saying these steps are necessary to control the exchange rate. That is what I've picked. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Minister has not answered the second question in very simple, very clear terms. What measures? If there are no measures, the Minister should state that there are no measures to cushion the impact on the people. If there are measures to cushion the impact, the Minister should state measure 1, measure 2, measure 3. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to find out from the Minister of Finance, what measures is government taking to cushion the impact? The exchange rate was at around 16 point something. Despite all these measures, despite putting in dollars, the exchange rate is still going up. Despite increasing the statutory reserve ratio, the exchange rate is going up. Despite increasing the monetary policy rate, Minister, the exchange rate is still going up, meaning there are no steps being taken to cushion the impact. So, Mr. Speaker, I want this question to be answered in the most simplest form, so that the teachers out there, the police officers, the general public that have borrowed money can leave this conversation with an answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Honorable, once again. Yes, the exchange rate is not yet stabilized in spite of the interventions of dollar sales by the Bank of Zambia into the market, in spite so far of adjustments to those two monetary ratios. Okay? And I repeat, the reason why it is not yet stabilized is because the major driver out of this, the debt situation left behind by PF colleagues. Even though we've made sufficient progress, we are not yet there, okay? We are not yet there. Now, it is also important to say this. You are saying that there's been no impact, but please also think in the counterfactual. The counterfactual says, supposing there were no dollars that had been offloaded in the market by Bank of Zambia, supposing there were no adjustment to this ratio that we're talking about, would the exchange rate still be where it is today, depreciated as it is? The answer is no. The exchange rate would have been maybe 30 or something like that. Therefore, I think it is wrong to imply that because intervention took place, because changes in the ratio took place, but the exchange rate is not yet appreciated or stabilized. Therefore, those are not working. They are working. Because in the absence of that, things would have been worse. Okay? It's very important that you must understand that. Now, coming back to your specific question, the measures. Well, the whole essence, remember, the whole essence is to put pressure, to put brakes on the demand for dollars. Whether you are traveling and you need dollars, whether you want dollars for whatever reason, The whole essence of this is to put brakes on that. So if you are talking about cushions, there are no immediate cushions. The cushions will come when the situation stabilizes, and therefore you begin to unwind. So the point is that the whole reason why this were put in place is to put brakes on the system. Okay? So it has to be like that. It has to bite. If you want me to be blunt, it has to bite. Because that biting is what is going to bring stability. I hope I'm very clear in my statement. Very good.